All right, it was inevitable. 17 regular season games it is, starting in 2021. Charles Robinson was on he's fresh off of a conference call with Roger Goodell from the league meetings. Charles, we both lamented what we see as unnecessary expansion of the regular season or the replacement of one preseason game. Oh, nice hair. Oh, I like that.
Wow, look at this.
Matter of fact, I haven't seen your hair at all lately because it's just been Houston. Where's your University of Houston hat? Where's your Houston hat today? I thought you'd be repping Houston, the Cougars today.
Yeah, I got something I got to be at, so I had to actually not wear a hat today. I have to get a haircut too. It is crazy long right now. So
you're looking like Vince Vaughn in Wedding Crashers. I like to put a little maple syrup in my hair. What do you think holds it up, Slick?
I used to get haircuts about every 4 weeks, maybe even less. And now I think I go like the first haircut since like the March of 2020, beginnings of the pandemic, I went 8 months. And then after that, I think I went, 4 months. And this one's, it's getting there. So I gotta get used to going back in and getting haircuts again.
You know those memes that go around on Twitter that be like, what does it look like I do for a living? You look like a rapper who is just one that just needs somebody to listen to his mixtape. You look like a rapper right now. No glasses.
I am the inevitable guy on Twitter who gets one viral tweet and immediately follows it up with, "Yo, check out my SoundCloud."
Exactly. Since I have your attention.
Yeah,
I
got you.
That's exactly it. That's right. Since I have your attention, check out my SoundCloud. I just dropped my new.
Can you help us get excited about 17 games? I mean, like, we have no choice in the matter, so we have to take it and like it. But it's just like I'm struggling to find a point, other than money. We know it's money, but what's the?
All right, let's play the glass half full game. So you have 17 games. It's not gonna. It will affect. I mean, obviously, it's gonna affect the compensation in the long term. So players, if there's something players want to be happy about. When 2023 comes and there's that huge gap up in the salary cap, and pretty soon every single quarterback that's in the top 10 is making $40 million, and you have the star defensive end now is making $30 million. Financially, it will eventually be lucrative. I think though, for the league, it allows the league to push overseas expansion a little bit more in terms of just, making sure that the overseas rotation happens on a regular basis. They can, it's not all taking place in London. I know they still want to try and get some games into China. So that's going to expand the TV deals overseas, which is going to be more money. And I think if they work on how they want to handle that 17th game, they're not doing it now. But eventually, I think they could use that extra game to manufacture some kind of entertaining matchup, figuring out, something that they think fans want to see. And then maybe in 2022 or 2023, you see some interconference rivalry games, or, maybe you take it and there are two coaches who hate each other, and let's make sure we schedule those guys. Let's make sure we get John Harbaugh and, we get the Baltimore Ravens and Tennessee Titans next year because we want to see John Harbaugh and Mike Vrabel again at midfield. And, I think there's ways that they can spice it up. I know that from an injury standpoint, it's not great. I would hope that maybe this impacts, though, for players, load management. That's what the union wants. The union really wants load management in the offseason. And I think they feel like this gives them the opportunity to press a little bit more. Not just obviously the reduction of the preseason games, but let's have less practices. Let's have less facility time for guys in the offseason, and maybe actually turn the offseason into a little more of a load management time for players.
Charles, I asked this question. I said I need some more information on it. And before I could look up more information, you came on. So you'll know this. Do the players have any leverage with this? Because I said if they have leverage, why not reduce the preseason even more? Why not add more players to the roster? What kind of leverage do the players have in this negotiation?
The players don't have negotiation leverage. They never have. And I think that, okay, so we can take a lot of different issues. We could go, how come they don't have 50% of revenue? There was a time that they had more than 50% of revenue. Right now, they're still a tick below. I think they're at like 49% of overall revenue. It's not even a straight up 50-50 revenue split. It's because you don't have the leverage. And the reason why you don't have the leverage is there's no other league to play in. And the only way to create leverage when there's no other league to play in is to literally erase games, sit out, strike. That's why CBA negotiations always go the way that they go, and players always are seen as the losing side because there's no way for them to win if they do not meaningfully band together and go, we'll just erase games until it hurts owners enough that we can win. Not having 17 games, not having 3 preseason games, things of that nature. So I think it's a myth, and it always has been a myth, that being a union president is a winning job. It's not a winning job, it's a losing job, because you had 500 players, 500, who didn't even vote on pushing through the last CBA. 500 out of 2,700. Can you imagine knowing what was on the line in the last CBA, how massively important that was and how close the vote was? I think it passed by, I want to say less than like 70, I think it was like 61 votes, somewhere in that realm. I'm probably completely wrong there, but I know it was very few votes. And 500 people just decided we're not going to vote. I mean, come on, that's just, you should have 95 to 100% of your 2,700 players voting. That's why the union doesn't have leverage. That's why there's a 17th game. That's why there's a 49% to 51% revenue split. That's why the commissioner still has free latitude in terms of disciplinary powers. All the things that they lose on, it's because it's impossible to take that one difficult step. And it's very difficult, monumentally difficult, because most of the players in the league are not multimillionaires to go, yeah, I'm just going to erase a year of my career. And, we're going to do this for future generations. It's not a give forward kind of league.
We were talking during the break about the conference call that you and other members of the national media were on. And you mentioned that Roger Goodell, there was a certain question that Roger Goodell was not asked, so a certain topic that was not broached with the commissioner. Take it away.
Deshaun Watson. I mean, it's the number one story in the NFL right now. We can talk about, 17 games or, hey, they want fans, full capacity next year. They want stadiums full next year. The biggest storyline of this offseason that's going to drag all offseason is going to be Deshaun Watson. And I'm clueless as to why there wasn't an ability to get a Deshaun Watson question in. But, it is a difficult issue for the league right now because it's difficult for everyone. There's a lot of accusations being made. It's, 19 civil suits now. There's a Sports Illustrated story that came out with a second attorney now involved and a woman, an alleged victim who did not decide to sign up with Tony Busby. Instead, went with UA Lewis, who's a pretty well-known civil rights attorney here in Houston. And the Sports Illustrated story I thought was interesting because when you read through it, the account, the allegations, they map very similarly to what is in most of the lawsuits that are now filed against Deshaun Watson, but it adds a more personal angle to it and a voice, albeit an anonymous voice, of someone who clearly felt that some boundaries were crossed and it made her feel violated.
Mm-hmm. You know what, Mike and Charles, and I've talked with Mike about this before, Charles, we were saying, we always tell students, you don't really know people that you're interviewing. You can't say, if somebody is good to you, you can't say they're a great guy. If somebody is terrible to you, you can't say, well, he didn't talk to me, that's a terrible person. You really don't know. This is all surface level stuff that we're doing. Even in an in-depth profile piece, an in-depth feature, you really don't know. And so what's so unsettling about this case to me is not the accusations, because I don't know what happened. I still don't know what happened. I'm not willing to take a stand either way. What's so unsettling to me is that it just destroys, all cliches have been destroyed. So it's not like, hey, it's one person, her word, it's not a he said, she said. It's a lot of people. going at Deshaun Watson. It's not the carnival barking lawyer. Even if you say that about Tony Busby, his career is pretty decorated, and so is Rusty Hardin. You don't really, there's no comfortable place for anybody to hide in this story. It's just out there, and you gotta wrestle with it. You know what I mean? It's like, this is not one of those things, it's is hot take proof. You just have to sit here and wait this thing out.
It really is. You do it. I mean, it's going to be a marathon, and there's no really getting around it. And as you said, not only do we not know, let's say Deshaun Watson, we don't know the 19 accusers that have filed the suits, right? I mean, and there are levels of how well do people know Tony Busby? How well do people know Rusty Hardin? It's not, it's an onion the size of a moon, if you want to peel it. Okay, I mean, it's gargantuan, and so. It is, I think, though, what's interesting, it's not like we're not getting information, because we are. And I'll give you an example. In the, let's see, 17th, 18th, and 19th suits, one of those suits, Tony Busby comes out and he says he put it in there, and it was a very media, I think it was a tactical media headline-grabbing move for him to say, there were Instagram messages deleted, and there was an attempt to settle. And what I thought was interesting was Rusty Hardin actually responded to that specifically. And he did say that, yes, Deshaun Watson, and I think he termed it like many people, deleted some of his old Instagram messages, but he stopped the day before the suit was filed. And that just opens up a whole, level of questioning, because I'll be honest with you, I'm not an Instagram guy. I have Twitter, I have other social media accounts. And I asked, I started asking people, like, do you like, how often do you delete Instagram messages? And I can't apply this as a standard, but the feedback, a lot of people are like, I don't really ever delete my Instagram messages ever. And, does that mean that that's standard practice or not? You start getting into these arguments, but the lawyers are leaking information, or they're starting to put things out there and respond to them in a way that's at least giving us little bits of information. But ultimately, I'm going to stick to the same thing I've said all along. Everything gets revealed in litigation. If this goes into a courtroom, that's when everything gets pulled apart. You see the seams of the victim's argument, the alleged victim's arguments. You see the seams of Deshaun Watson's arguments and defense. And this is the type of situation that, if it does never get litigated, say none of these cases ever go to litigation, and if there's a settlement or whatever, for whatever reason, we don't ever really take this apart, I don't know that we'll ever get past this. I think it's something we'll always end up talking about with Deshaun Watson and the remainder of his career.
It just, it continues to look worse and worse. To say that these allegations are disturbing is an understatement. And I think at this point, like I said, it'll be revealed. If it goes to litigation, it'll be revealed in litigation. And whether we arrive at the actual factual truth, absolute truth, who knows? But I think in the meantime, as we run this marathon that you referenced, Charles, I think it's important not to center the quarterback. I think it's important not to center the quarterback. And I think that's the mistake that we've made with this story and this conversation. Not this particular conversation. I just mean since the story started, it's been about Deshaun Watson and who he is and who we believe him to be and what he is or isn't capable of based on who he is or who we believe him to be. And I think what it's really got to simply be about is sexual assault. And I think, again, this has been a refrain throughout this entire show, is more than one thing can be true. It can be innocent until proven guilty, and these can be civil accusations. There can be no criminal charges, but at the same time, we can recognize that false accusations are rare, that there are 19 and now multiple attorneys, as well as somebody who is not attached to an attorney, but actually went to a reputable media organization. We can take these allegations seriously with respect to understanding that and learning about ourselves and learning about inappropriate behavior. And I think one of the reasons we perpetuate this inappropriate behavior, and one of the ways we perpetuate this inappropriate behavior, because Michael, I wanted to bring this up the other day, Darius Leonard, who I like a lot, Darius Leonard went there over the weekend, and he did the whole. He was guilty of the whataboutism. Was like, oh well, nobody talked about Chad Wheeler, as if nobody talked about Chad Wheeler.
That's inaccurate.
But nobody talked about Chad Wheeler. But it's like it's inaccurate, but it's also irrelevant. It's also irrelevant.
Right.
Just like when Chad Wheeler was when Chad Wheeler happened, and we talked about Chad Wheeler, people were like, have that same energy for Chad Wheeler that you had for Ray Rice. Ain't about Chad Wheeler and Ray Rice. It's about the victim. And in this case, it's about the alleged victims or the accusers, whatever you want to call them. It's about inappropriate behavior and outing and discussing sexual assault, period. And holding abusers and perpetuators of sexual assault accountable. And it's about these accusers and these women and their experiences. If there is any truth to it, it's about them speaking truth to this power structure, which is historically favored men. So I just say we can't center the quarterback. This cannot be about and listen, Deshaun may end up being the victim because we don't know what's true and what's not. But in the meantime, the story needs to be sexual assault. We cannot center the quarterback and his relation and his trade possibilities and his reputation. That's not what this is about. This is about the allegations that are very, very disturbing and a culture that allows alleged behavior like this to run rampant. So that's all I have to say about that.
I will tell you one thing that has surfaced out of this that's really disturbing to me. There is a strain of individuals that I have talked to inside the league who clearly have not I think most people haven't read through all the lawsuits, to be honest with you. I think the vast majority of people commenting on it have not read through the lawsuits, okay? I've read every single syllable of all 19 of them. You're talking between 170 and like 200 pages of litigation. I have noticed there's a strain of individuals who are like, well, if it's true, is it really illegal to be a pervert? And I was like, okay. I'm like, what year are we in? Because it's 2021, and let's just remove Deshaun Watson's name out of this for a moment and just talk about the allegations themselves, and that there's masseuses involved, and the social media platform was involved, and you brought up Darius Leonard, Chad Wheeler. I've heard Bob Kraft. What about Bob Kraft and all these equivocations? I'm going to tell you something right now. All of us as men should know at this point in our lives that if at any point we decide, either in a private or professional setting, to expose ourselves to anybody in a way that is not welcome, is not, or the other party does not consider it a consensual way, that we just did something wrong. Okay. Now, what's the level of litigation? What's the level of criminality to it? There's a lot of different factors that depend there, and even which state you could be could impact that you reside in could impact that. But I think what bothers me is just that you get a strain of individuals who are not fully vetting themselves on the allegations themselves, and then just kind of blasé about what did or didn't occur. And I kind of hoped we were past that in particularly in the NFL culture, the sort of, well, women are lying culture that I still think is very pervasive in some corners of the NFL, that women just lie, and that, it's not that bad. And no, it's 2021. It's not like that anymore. We need to, it's time to let that,
it's time to grow up.
Okay? Yeah.
It's honestly, it's time to grow up. Collectively, as a society, it's just time to grow up. And going back to how we started this conversation, I think the reason why it wasn't asked is because we're still not comfortable talking about the actual issue, which is sexual assault, which is domestic violence. Across the board, men in particular are just not comfortable talking about that. It's way more convenient, it's way more instinctive to do the women lie thing. And listen, there may be some lying going on. It'd be a hell of a lie, but there may be some lying going on. So I'm setting aside truth and fiction. I'm simply saying, for a lot of men still, it's much easier to focus on the player and liking the player and rooting for the player and which team he could have gone to and the Texans, instead of focusing on the actual issue, which is whether it's Deshaun Watson or not, or whether it's anybody. This behavior, this inappropriate behavior, is still way too pervasive and permissible in our culture. That's the conversation. That should be the only conversation right now.
You're asking a lot, man, because we continue to have a national fight about whether or not we should wear masks. You know, like, we fight about the dumbest stuff, and we can't agree about the dumbest things.
Yeah.
And, you know, I thought what I thought was really interesting was Jamel Hill retweeted the Jenny Vrentas story from Sports Illustrated. And I went and I read. I was like, let me see what the comments are. I'm curious what these comments are. And
no, you went in the comment section.
it is a.
You went in the replies.
It is a. I know, man. It's just never. It's never a positive experience. Like you're never going to get anything redeeming out of that. But
that's right.
It is real. Like, it is real. Those replies are real. Those people are real.
It tends to be revealing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, and so that's tough. I don't want our segment to be completely eaten up by this. So we're going to talk about this a lot.
Okay. So. I tell you. You know what, Charles? Since you're in Texas, let me see if I can get this right geographically, based on my travels. We're going to go from El Paso to Port Arthur. We're going in a completely different direction. Does that work somewhere?
Yeah, that does. Let's go in a completely different direction. Yes.
Different direction. So let's talk about the team currently holding the 3rd pick in the draft, San Francisco.
Interesting.
The team currently holding the 6th pick in the draft, the Dolphins. And the team that Michael Smith says I should not make fun of because they got lots of picks, but they've confused me since the season ended, Philadelphia at number 12. As you look at these trades, and essentially a 3-team trade, who comes out ahead? Who intrigues you? What stands out to you?
Well, they all intrigue me. I mean, first off, the 49ers, it was interesting because before that deal happened, I had reached out to someone in the 49ers organization to try to see if they had any interest in sort of understanding the dynamics of what was going on with Deshaun Watson, because they were one of those teams that was sort of thought, to be interested. They had no interest whatsoever. And I was like, okay, either they have no interest in Deshaun Watson at this point, or they are doing something else. And then the trade comes down the pipeline and they move to 3. I think it's interesting because number one, they're still posturing about Jimmy Garoppolo, kind of saying like, "Hey, Jimmy's our guy. We can draft we could get a young quarterback and still have Jimmy as our starter." Sort of like a Kansas City Chiefs situation with Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes, which is doable, and I think that was very fruitful for Patrick Mahomes to be able to sit that year and learn from Alex Smith. And we also know that Jimmy tends to get hurt, so the chances are the rookie would end up playing anyway for the 49ers. But what I think is real interesting is everyone's penciling in Mac Jones from Alabama at number 3, which does make a lot of sense. His skill set is similar to Matt Ryan. His skill set is similar to Kirk Cousins, who are both quarterbacks that Kyle Shanahan was able to do great things with. What I think is interesting, though, is Kyle has, and I mean this in a positive way, has an arrogance to him where I think he's like Sean Payton, where Sean Payton had Drew Brees, and then all of a sudden he sees Taysom Hill and he goes, let me try this. Like this kind of looks like where the league is going with some of these quarterbacks, and maybe I can get this guy to that level. Let me see if I can make Taysom Hill into a starting quarterback. And Taysom Hill is more similar to Trey Lance. He's more similar to Justin Fields. And so I think this idea that's just an automatic Mac Jones at 3 is surrendering to the idea that Kyle Shanahan isn't sitting there going, yeah, I could do that. I could take Trey Lance, and man, we could dominate the league. I could take Justin Fields and we could dominate the league. I think still there's some intrigue at that number 3 pick and what quarterback Kyle Shanahan really likes.
So that actually dovetails into my final question for you, which was, what was the significance of Justin Fields' performance at his pro day today? It's I think all of these guys' pro day performances
particularly now, other than getting measurements and, he ran a fast 40 and all that, I think they're less important now than ever before because we didn't have the combine. I just think this is going to be a year where the tape gets dominated because you had a lot of people that were just crushing tape, whether it was 2020 tape or 2019 tape or even 2018 tape. I literally had a general manager who at one point was in quarantine for COVID. He didn't have it, but he had a close contact. So he had to quarantine himself. And I was like, what have you been doing? He's like, I'm literally living like in the basement of my house away from my family. And I've been doing nothing but devouring tape over and over, the same tape over and over again for this entire week. And a lot of guys are like that. There's a lot of people who are not able to get on the road, do their work. So I think the tape is going to be more studied this year than ever before. My problem with the field situation is that when people nitpick him, they go, oh, he's a first read quarterback. He always throws to his first read. Well, how do you really resolve that in a pro day scenario? You really can't. And my thought process with the pro days is always, it goes back to an experience I had where I went to Jamarcus Russell's pro day at LSU. And it was the most unbelievable pro day I've ever seen, ever. Any pro day
greatest of all time.
It was unreal. I mean, his arm was just, it was like a gift from the gods that day. And just the stuff he was throwing, it was beyond words. And all the teams that walked out were like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like and then what happened? He went to the wrong organization. Like I really believe that about Jamarcus Russell. I think that's the untold story. He went to the wrong organization to handle that guy and his life circumstance. And it ultimately unraveled what could have been a defining quarterback, I think, in the NFL. So I'll put a ton into pro days. Zach Wilson was great. I thought it was pretty interesting that that Trevor Lawrence retweeted a throw from Zach Wilson and said, what did he say? Geez? Or it was
yeesh or sheesh or something.
Yeah, sheesh.
That's good PR. That's good PR.
That's good.
How secure. It's slick.
Yeah, that is how secure you are with the number one pick. That you are the number one pick in the draft. That you're like, I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle a little of the fairy dust that I have right now on Zach Wilson.
All right, hey man, we appreciate you. Thanks for always spending some time with us on a Tuesday, dropping some knowledge. I like the look. Although, you are in the U of H. I know you're a Michigan State guy, but you're a Cougar right now, right?
Well, my girl went to U of H, so it's you kind of get you get drafted in. You get drafted into the, and plus, hey, they're in the Final Four. So Kelvin Sampson, how about that?
Kind of makes me a vegetarian.
Great
too.
story.
And by the way, as I sign off, I just want to say that was a foul. Like, come on, that was completely a foul.
Yeah,
that was a foul.
Exactly.
A foul. What you gonna do?